My name is Callista Ward. I'm 32 years old, and tonight I learned that a place card can feel like a verdict. The ballroom of the Savannah Riverfront Hotel glowed with chandeliers and gold-rimmed glasses, every detail arranged to make my brother Nathan's wedding shimmer with perfection. When the usher handed me my card, I smiled politely, but my stomach sank the second I saw it. Table 12. At first, it seemed harmless until I followed the directions and found myself wedged against the swinging kitchen doors. Waiters brushed past me carrying trays of champagne, their apologies quick, their eyes darting away. The draft from the corridor tickled my bare shoulders. Around me, chairs scraped as couples leaned close, laughing in the warm glow of candlelight. My table mates didn't even glance up. A pair of distant cousins whispered to each other, and my great-aunt Janet immediately launched into a monologue about how picky women stay single too long. I knew who had placed me here. Nathan caught my eye from across the room, his arm draped around his new bride. Meredith. His grin widened. A brother's grin should feel like home. His felt like a shove. Later. He made sure the humiliation was complete. Introducing me to a cluster of Meredith's relatives, people with old money written into every line of their tailored suits, he laughed easily. "And this is my sister, Callista," he said, his hand tightening around Meredith's waist. "Our career woman, still waiting for the right guy. But hey, she's got time." Laughter rippled politely through the group, but the sympathy in their eyes burned hotter than the chandeliers. I smiled with lips that barely held together, my heart thudding in my ears. I wanted to disappear into the wallpaper, but the worst part was knowing Nathan wanted me visible, sitting at table 12 like an exhibit, proof that not everyone gets a perfect ending. I lowered my gaze to my plate, my pulse sharp and quick. The ballroom suddenly too bright. I told myself it was only one night, but deep down, I sensed something was shifting, that before the night was over, someone else's voice would cut through the noise and change everything. Growing up in Savannah meant living inside a storybook that was already written, one where my brother Nathan was the golden child and I was just a footnote. Our parents, Diane and Paul, adored us both. But Nathan's achievements always seemed to shine brighter. He was the varsity quarterback, the one who landed debate trophies, the boy everyone in church whispered about with pride. I was quieter, the reader who filled sketchbooks during sermons, the girl who slipped away to the library after school. My parents never said it out loud, but I felt it the way praise flowed easily toward Nathan while my efforts were nice or sweet, words that sounded like consolation prizes. As we grew older, the gulf widened. Nathan left for Emory University, then came back to Savannah with a finance job that made our parents beam. I worked at a nonprofit downtown, managing campaigns that rarely impressed anyone at Sunday dinners. For Nathan, life unfolded like a red carpet. For me, it was more like a side street no one noticed. The rivalry sharpened when he met Meredith Sinclair. Her family owned property on Jones Street, where moss-draped oaks arched over historic mansions that tourists photographed. Meredith had the kind of upbringing that looked perfect from the outside cotillions, summer trips to Europe, an accent softened by finishing school. When Nathan proposed to her, my parents called it a match straight out of Southern tradition. Meredith was polite, but behind her polished smile lived an unspoken hierarchy. At family gatherings, she'd lean across me to ask Nathan questions, as if my seat at the table were ornamental. Once, when I mentioned a campaign I was running to support literacy in Savannah schools, she blinked as though she hadn't heard, then turned to Nathan with, "Did you tell them about the new condo we're buying by the time their engagement party rolled around?" I'd stopped expecting fairness. Nathan thrived on comparisons, and I had learned to lower my head rather than compete. Still, nothing prepared me for tonight for being seated at table 12, on the night he wanted every detail perfect. Except me, back in the ballroom. The music swelled with brass and laughter. My seat at table 12 felt colder now, as if humiliation had seeped into the linen itself. I tried to focus on the silverware, on the rhythm of my breath, but the parade began almost immediately. Meredith's aunt, a tall woman in emerald silk, slid into the empty chair beside me. "Sweetheart, don't lose hope," she said, her perfume sharp and cloying. "My sister married at 40. You've got plenty of time." Her hand patted mine as if I were some child who had dropped her ice cream cone before I could respond. Another relative swooped in a cousin with a diamond bracelet that sparkled beneath the chandelier. "The trick is lowering your standards just a little," she confided, leaning close as though sharing a secret. "Not everyone gets a banker like Nathan." "Have you tried online apps again?" Each word chipped at me, 1,000 tiny cuts dressed as kindness. When the photographer passed by with his camera, he paused. Puzzled. "No +1 tonight?" he asked brightly, scanning the space around me as if someone invisible should have been filling the empty chair. When I shook my head, his brow knit before he recovered. "Ah, well, I'll get you smiling anyway." I forced one, tight as a thread. The pity came in waves. A great uncle urging me to join a church group, a bridesmaid suggesting fertility clinics, as though my body were a time bomb. Even strangers I barely knew felt entitled to offer roadmaps for fixing my life. Nathan drifted past once, laughing with Meredith's family, and caught my eye. The satisfaction in his glance was unmistakable. He'd orchestrated this my private insecurities turned into public sport. I sipped my champagne, bitter at the back of my throat. My smile stayed in place, though it felt more like a mask than anything human. Underneath, humiliation pressed heavier with each passing minute, until I could barely breathe, and still the night had more to give. The music shifted into a playful pop song, and the DJ's voice boomed across the ballroom. "All right, ladies, all the single women to the dance floor." I froze. My hands clenched around my glass, the condensation cold against my skin. Around me, women stood eagerly, laughing as they hurried toward the front. I sank lower in my chair, praying the spotlight would pass me over. But it didn't. Meredith's maid of honor, a willowy blonde named Claire, appeared at my side with a sugary smile. "Come on, Callista," she coaxed, tugging at my arm before I could protest. "Don't be shy, it might be your night." Her tone was sweet, but her grip was firm, leaving me little choice. The crowd parted as she pulled me forward. I stood among 20-somethings in bright dresses, all glowing with youth and possibility. Their laughter rang out like bells, but beside them I felt older, out of place, exposed, from the head of the dance floor. Meredith held her bouquet high, its white roses glimmering under the lights. She locked eyes with me, lips curving into a smirk too small for anyone else to notice but sharp enough to slice me open. "Ready?" she called. The crowd cheered. She tossed the bouquet, her arm flicking in a graceful arc deliberately away from me. I watched the cluster of flowers sail across the room and land neatly in the arms of a young cousin, Chloe, who squealed with delight. Applause erupted. Nathan stepped forward, clapping Chloe on the back, then raised his voice loud enough for the room to hear. "Guess my sister will have to wait a little longer." The laughter that followed hit harder than any slap. Heat rose to my face, and my eyes stung. Around me, people smiled with that same mixture of pity and amusement, relieved it wasn't them on display. I wanted to run to slip out the back doors and vanish into the night, but my heels stayed rooted to the polished floor. My humiliation was complete, and Nathan knew it. I turned away, clutching my purse, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. I had to leave before he saw me break, but the night wasn't finished with me yet. I slipped away from the dance floor before the laughter had even faded, my chest tight and raw. My purse hung heavy on my arm as I made my way toward the exit near the catering hallway. If I left now, no one would notice except Nathan. Who would know he had won, That thought stung almost as much as the humiliation itself. I bent down to gather my things when a voice, low and steady, brushed against my ear. "Pretend you're with me." I straightened so fast the strap of my purse slid from my shoulder. A man stood at my side, tall in a gray suit cut so cleanly it looked like it belonged in a magazine. His hair was dark, his presence unhurried, his gaze both kind and sharp. What? My voice cracked. He smiled faintly, as though we'd rehearsed this. "William Hale," he said, extending his hand as though we'd known each other all along. "Cousin of Meredith's, from Boston." "Mind if I sit?" Before I could answer, he slid gracefully into the empty chair at my table, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. His movements were so smooth, so assured. It felt less like improvisation and more like inevitability. My pulse raced. "Why are you—" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because your brother has spent half the night broadcasting your life to anyone who'd listen. I thought you might like to change the channel." His hand found mine gently. Not forceful, just enough for others to see. The touch startled me, but I didn't pull away. Across the room, I caught Nathan mid-conversation, his eyes narrowing as he noticed us. For the first time all night. His smile faltered. The air shifted. The waiter who had been ignoring me now asked if we'd like another round of champagne. Two cousins who hadn't bothered to look my way were suddenly watching William, whispering behind their hands. The pity that had clung to me began to thin, replaced with curiosity. William kept his gaze on me, waiting. It was my choice: drop the act, retreat into the shadows, or lean into the story he'd just offered. I laced my fingers with his, my first act of defiance, small but electric. The noise of the ballroom dimmed as something inside me steadied. For the first time that evening, I wasn't standing alone in Nathan's spotlight. William raised a hand and a server appeared almost instantly, as though answering to him was second nature. "2 glasses of champagne." "Please," he said, his voice calm, assured. When the server returned, William slid one flute toward me and lifted his own in a quiet toast. "2 surviving weddings," he murmured. The line was simple, but it tugged a laugh out of me, real and unguarded. It felt strange, that laugh like fresh air rushing into a room that had been shut for too long. He asked me about my work, his questions sincere, not polite placeholders. When I spoke about the nonprofit campaigns I managed, his eyes stayed fixed on mine, his smile patient, like he actually cared. No one at this wedding had looked at me that way all night. I noticed the shift ripple outward. Cousins who had avoided my table before now craned their necks, whispering. Meredith's aunt, the one in emerald silk, slowed her walk as she passed us, her gaze lingering on William's hand resting casually near mine. Across the ballroom, Nathan's laughter cut off mid-sentence. His smile faltered, his posture stiffened. He leaned to Meredith, who followed his gaze, her expression tightening. The satisfaction in their eyes was gone, replaced by something sourer uncertainty. William seemed to sense the attention but didn't waver. He leaned close to tell me a story about getting lost on River Street that afternoon. Mimicking his own exasperation with such flair, I laughed again, louder this time. Heads turned toward the sound, toward us. When the band slowed into a jazz standard, William tilted his head. Dance with me. The invitation alone was enough to set my pulse racing. I hesitated, but he offered his hand with such quiet confidence it felt impossible to refuse. I rose, sliding my fingers into his, and he led me onto the floor. The music swirled around us. His hand settled lightly at my waist, guiding me with a steadiness that made the room fade. It should have been an act pretend we were something we weren't, but the warmth of his touch, the ease of our laughter, the way his eyes searched mine made the line between pretense and truth blur dangerously fast. For the first time that night, I felt seen not as Nathan's sister, Not as the single woman at table 12, but as someone worth noticing. The music wrapped around us as William and I moved together, his steps steady, mine growing bolder. I almost forgot the watching eyes until Nathan's voice sliced through the song. "Well, well," he said, appearing at the edge of the dance floor with Meredith clinging to his arm. His smile was wide but brittle. "Didn't know you brought someone. Callista." "Funny how you left that out." The dancers nearby slowed, sensing tension. I felt William's hand firm at my back. "An anchor." "Old friends," William said easily, his tone smooth as glass. "Reunited tonight." Nathan barked a laugh, too sharp to be genuine. "Is that so? Because it looks like my sister's been staging a little performance. Can't stand being single, so she drags some poor guy into the act." A murmur swept through the crowd. Meredith's smile froze, her fingers tightening around Nathan's sleeve as if she sensed him tipping too far. William opened his mouth, but I laid my hand lightly on his arm. My heart pounded, yet the words rose from somewhere steadier than I expected. I turned to the DJ, who stood frozen behind his booth. "May I asked, gesturing toward the microphone. His eyes darted to Nathan, then back to me. Before he handed it over with a shrug, the ballroom hushed. The weight of silence pressed on my chest, but I lifted my chin. "I'm not here for anyone's entertainment," I said, my voice carrying farther than I thought it could. "I don't owe anyone explanations for my life, least of all tonight. I deserve the same respect Nathan demands for himself and nothing less." A ripple moved through the guests, whispers soft but undeniable. Some exchanged glances, others looked down, uncomfortable. Nathan's jaw tightened, his practiced composure slipping as if someone had pulled a thread loose. I handed the microphone back, my hands steady now. William's eyes shone with quiet pride, but the moment belonged to me. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking under Nathan's spotlight. I had stepped into it. Nathan stood motionless, his grin gone, his control fractured in front of everyone who mattered to him. The night lurched forward after my speech, the band striking up another upbeat tune to smooth over the tension, but the air had changed. Every glance carried a question. Every laugh felt thinner. When the time came for the garter toss, the crowd gathered, restless with anticipation. Richard, the best man, lifted the band of satin high before flicking it toward the waiting group of bachelors with one clean arc. It sailed straight into William's hand. Applause scattered, half uncertain, as he raised it with a polite smile. Nathan's voice rang out, sharp as broken glass. "Oh, come on, he doesn't even know her." My sister just latched onto the first guy who'd play along. A hush spread. My throat tightened, but before I could speak, a new voice broke in, measured, professional. It was Marla, the wedding planner, standing a few feet away with her tablet clutched to her chest. Her eyes flicked nervously between us, then settled on Nathan. "With respect, Mr. Ward, that's not quite accurate. The seating chart came directly from your notes." Murmurs rippled. William stepped forward, extending a calm hand. Marla hesitated, then turned the tablet toward him. On the screen glowed an email. "Crisp and undeniable Siat Callista at table 12. Near the service doors, keep the singles together. Label rejects table." Gasps cut through the ballroom. William's face remained composed as he angled the screen toward the nearest cluster of relatives. One by one, eyes widened, lips pressed into thin lines. The proof passed like wildfire, shame staining every corner it touched. I felt heat rush to my face, not from embarrassment this time, but from the strange weight of vindication. Across from me, Nathan froze. His mouth opened, then closed again, for once. There were no clever quips, no polished grins, only the stunned silence of a man watching his own cruelty read aloud without a sound. His jaw hung slack, every ounce of control stripped away, And just like that, the room that had once pitied me now turned toward him. The ballroom emptied slowly, laughter replaced by uneasy whispers. I slipped outside into the damp savanna night, the scent of river water heavy in the air. The parking lot was quiet, the only light spilling from the tall lamps that lined the brick pathway. William walked beside me, jacket draped over his arm. His steps unhurried. I clutched my purse tighter, the adrenaline finally leaving my body. "Thank you," I said softly, the words fragile but true. "You didn't have to do any of that. You barely know me." He stopped near my car, his expression steady. "I did it because I've seen this before," he said. "My sister went through the same thing singled out, made small at family events until she almost believed it." I couldn't stand to watch it happen again. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in. "It started as a rescue," he continued, slipping a card from his pocket. "But it doesn't have to end that way. This isn't just a role I played for a night, if you'd like. Call me. Not for appearances, not for revenge, just because you want to." The card was thick, his number written neatly across it. My fingers trembled as I took it. Months later, I did more than call. We became us slowly, carefully, without the shadows of that night defining us. His laughter filled spaces in my life that had once been hollow. His respect steadied me in ways I hadn't realized I needed. Exactly a year after Nathan's wedding, William knelt in the very hotel where we first met, his ring catching the same chandelier light that had once felt so cruel. This time, there was no humiliation, no audience waiting for me to falter, only people who wanted my happiness as much as I did. Looking back, the true victory wasn't Nathan's jaw-dropping or the whispers that followed. It was choosing not to let his story about me become the truth. For the first time, I knew I wasn't invisible. I had written my own ending,